And we are live. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the stream. I'm happy to have you back here with us for another interview with a member of the European Parliament. So I hope that you had a nice beginning of the week. So tonight we're going to have an MEP who has been already on the channel because he has participated in the past to an event, I think, end of last year, where actually we were he played Among Us with us and other MEP on the channel. And so this MEP is Damian Boeselager. So he's an MEP from the political group Greens EFA. So it's his group in the political in the European Parliament. But even if he is in the Greens EFA, his actual political party is Volt. It's a pan-European party. We're going to discuss that in a little bit. But yeah, he's sitting in the Greens. We're going to discuss that in detail. So it's sitting on the left side of EU politics, at least in the hemicycle. So he is German. He's been an MEP since 2019. So that's pretty much his first mandate. He's 34 years old and is in the European Parliament as a member of the Committee on Constitutional Affairs and is a substitute in the Committee on Budgets, the Committee on Economic and Monetary Affairs, the Committee on Industry, Research and Energy, and finally the Committee on Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs. So lots of work, very busy man. But like I was mentioning, the one thing that is particular about Damian Boeselager is that he is the co-founder of the only real pan-European party, that is Volt, and in the European Parliament he's focusing his work in creating on how to create a real European parliamentary democracy, because Volt, will discuss it, is a pro-federalist party, so they want to foster a real European democracy. But before we start the discussion, as usual, I remind the house rules for anyone who would be new with us tonight. So Mr. Boeselager is going to stay with us for more or less 45 minutes, so it's going to be a little shorter than usual. But again, after 45 minutes, he's going to go enjoy the rest of his evening or work if he still needs to work. But you'll still be stuck with me for another half an hour or so that we can share your impressions on the interview, ask additional questions. I can give some additional context, this kind of thing. So it's more for a discussion kind of thing. As usual, I have prepared my own question for Mr. Boeselager, focusing on his work in the parliament, on vote, etc., etc. But of course, you can have you can use the chat to suggest your questions, to react. It's there for that. I will keep an eye on it, and I will pick among your suggestions if the questions are relevant, interesting, and all that. So yeah, don't hesitate to participate. But as usual, do that by staying civil and without spamming. And final little rule is that we are on a channel to talk about European politics, so we're going to talk about European politics. So no national politics unless it's related to EU politics. But apart from that, that's it. Those are the basic rules. So let's dive right into it. Good evening, Damian Boeselager. Thank you very much for being with us tonight and taking the time. So I understand that you're live from Berlin right now. So you heard me do my little introduction about you and all that. Is there anything that I forgot that you would like to add before we start our discussion?
No, I think it was very precise and very good. The only small correction I would like to make is that I'm not 44, but 34.
It's 44. Sorry, I said 34. Sorry, I had not written 34.
I mean, I feel, every second I get older in this job, so maybe it's also justified.
No, I don't know why I forgot that, because technically, the biological reality is that we have the same age, so I don't know why I decided that you were 44 instead of 34, but yeah, I don't know, maybe it's me, I think I'm old as well. I don't know, apology, you're 34, not 44. No. But, well, let's dive into it. So you're in the European Parliament, you co-founded the European Party, Volt, but why did you start going to politics? What was the spark for you? What was the thing that said I have to get involved?
Yeah, so to be honest, I never really planned this. So it's not as if I had this grand scheme of saying, hey, I'm going to, found a European party and then sit in the European Parliament. So that's not how it went. Like, I was basically working for a private sector company, a consulting firm, for a couple of years, and then I started a master's program in the US for public administration, and I thought, great, I'm gonna be there for 2 years. I'm gonna go party in New York. It's gonna be fantastic, and then I'm going to go back and pay off my debt. That was roughly the idea. But I got there just after the Brexit referendum in 2016, and right in the middle of the election campaign between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And so I would say a rather politicized time, to be honest. And then a friend took me to Hillary Clinton's campaign center in the night of the election. And that was really quite extraordinary because we were there. There were 30,000 people, all Hillary Clinton campaigners and Hillary Clinton. There was like a great show on the stage with Katy Perry and the Bishop of New York. And I mean, there was like a lot of, engagement. And then obviously she lost and 30,000 people started crying around us. And so, I mean, basically that was the moment when we started considering, okay, maybe also, if we look at the EU and Europe, there's a lot of right-wing populists rising right now, and they can actually win. And what does it mean for us? And should we potentially try to do something against it? And then we came up with the idea of building a European party with the three of us.
And so you decided to create this party that became Volt. So maybe for the people in the chat who don't know exactly what Volt is, what makes Volt so specific in let's say the European political landscape?
So what really makes it special is that the three that we were one Italian guy, a French woman, and myself, a German, and we started from the beginning as a European movement, as a European party. So our analysis was that a lot of, all parties are national parties. So you in Europe you don't have any single MEP that is not elected by a national party. So in the end. The boss of the party is always, the national leader of the party, or is often, or sometimes also the, national leader of that government and so on. So it's always a national focus. And if the European Commission, that the commissioners are all sent by one nation, so there's also some national dimension to it. And obviously, if you look at the how the EU works with the council, these are purely national interests. And so all of it is a bit national. And so we thought, like, if we really want to get the EU working, we need to be able to have a European interest first. And that's why we came up with the idea of a European party as a counterweight against the nationalist parties, if you want.
And so Volt is a federalist party, so you want a federal Europe. So why did you decide to make federal Europe's let's say the core of the Volt's let's say political priorities? And do you see that happening anytime soon?
That's very simple. Before I went to the US, I was in the German migration office for a couple of months, half a year, and that was 2015. So you can imagine, what that looked like with it was almost like a slapstick of an office that is overwhelmed, but it wasn't funny because there were obviously lives behind all the individual asylum applications that were coming in. So and there was a complete overload. People didn't really understand what's going on. And for me, it was the first moment when I understood that actually, an asylum system can only work, or a migration system can only work in a continent that has open borders if it's a European asylum system. And then, if you think further, obviously, this is true for a lot of issues, not only asylum and migration. I work on digitization now. If you want to train your algorithm with data, it doesn't help you if you have different rules attached to that data in different countries. It will create a digital single, the digital markets will be separated, which will make it more difficult to scale than if you are in the US, for example. But also, obviously, topics that interest us a lot. Fridays for Future made us again aware of the fact that maybe we have an issue with our climate, and obviously the climate doesn't give a shit about our borders. Yeah? And if you now look at more recent examples of crises that happened, the pandemic didn't care much about our borders, nor does the impact that the energy markets now feel, or the security impact of Russia attacking Ukraine and being, and trying to kill the people there, is also more a thing that affects us all rather than single countries. So very simply put, I think what we understood is that if you want to actually solve and tackle the issues of our time, you need to work together in a functioning system in Europe.
Mm-hmm. And so now you're in the European Parliament, and like I mentioned in the introduction, you are part of the political group of the Greens, despite the fact that you're not a Green yourself back in Germany. And a question that's actually several people asked me when I was preparing the interview is like, oh, but why did Volt join the Green? I mean, well, they say, oh yeah, but you could fit in Renew, you could fit in the Socialists. So why did you choose to go with the Greens?
That's very simple, actually. We had a negotiation and they made the best offer. So once I got elected, I negotiated with the Liberals, so back then ALDE, now Renew, and the Greens, because it was clear that the Social Democrats had some member parties which were not okay for us, and the Conservatives at the time still had Viktor Orban amongst their ranks, so also some member parties which were not okay for us. And further left and further right, we obviously didn't want to go. So that left basically the middle, Greens and Liberals. And we negotiated very simply for committees. Why? Because I made 3 promises in the election, or Volt made 3 promises in the election campaign across all the different member states, the 7 countries where we campaigned. And the first one was fix the EU. So I wanted the Constitutional Affairs Committee. The second one was to build a more just society. So that for me was clear. I wanted to do migration and asylum. So I wanted the Interior Committee, LIBE. And the third one was that we want a more sustainable and innovation-friendly economy. And so I wanted to be in the Industrial Policy Committee to be able to actually work on that. So this is what I went to, what I took to the Liberals and to the Greens, and then the Greens said, yeah, you can have that. So I was like, okay, and then I go to the Greens. They have also a structural advantage, which you might be aware of, maybe 2 structural advantages. First, they don't really care about national delegations. So the Renew group still, they have a bit more of a hierarchical decision-making process where the national delegation lead, in this case from Germany, that would have been Nicolas Beer, takes a lot of the decisions together with the other national delegation leads. That wouldn't have been beneficial for me. I don't feel as part of a national delegation. I mean, our whole idea is to be a European movement, and they wanted to be, want me to be part of a national delegation. And the second part is, and that's a bit more a math thing, I realized you can obviously work on more laws if you're in a smaller group than if you're in a bigger group. That's just a mathematical reality because, as you know, and there's always one person from each group in a negotiation on every file. And so that means, obviously, if you're in a smaller group, you will have mathematically more files you can cover.
And so within the Greens, so are you attending, like for instance, the delegation meetings that the German Greens can have, or you're your own thing and you don't attend this kind of national delegation meeting?
No.
Okay.
I don't at all. The only thing I attend, and that happened 2 times in the whole mandate so far, so in 3.5 years, is a delegation leaders meeting. So I'm a delegation lead of my own mini delegation of 1 person, but that doesn't really matter for the Greens. They don't use it. And I attend the group meeting, and that is sufficient because all important decisions are being taken in the group. So that's a big advantage that the Greens have over the Liberals for individual smaller parties, for sure.
And so, despite the fact that you're part of the Greens, you don't always vote like the Greens. Like something that I remember back in January. So when the Parliament was electing the new president of the European Parliament, who became Roberta Metsola, you had announced, at least on social media, that you were going to support Roberta Metsola, despite the fact that the Greens were presenting a candidate against her and were actually actively against the candidacy of Roberta Metsola because of the controversies about abortion in Malta, etc., etc. So, why did you choose to support Roberta Metsola and not through the group? And how did you explain that to your colleagues from the Greens?
Yeah. So maybe to take a step back of like, how do you have impact in the European Parliament? Yeah. So what I realized is, and you will see, I vote a lot with the Greens. Why? Because when I negotiate with 75 members of the Greens on the files, and that's where I have the real, let's say, impact. So if I negotiate a law and I know I have the 75 votes behind me, I can change it in ways and try to push through Volt's agenda in that law. And that's where I think I have the biggest impact. Then obviously in the plenary, when you vote, the other people from the Greens also expect that you vote with them because they also want to vote, negotiate with the 75 votes. So you will see that I vote a lot with the group. Also because I do not have the capacity to look into all the different files and all the amendments that exist. Yeah, because there are thousands of amendments every every voting session. So I think sometimes from the outside people think that the real impact is done via voting, but I think if for individual small MPs, the real impact is done by negotiating in the files that they care about. So that's the first point. And yes, and then there are some issues where I vote differently. So gene technology, European Army, what else? There's a couple of other ones, yeah, where I know that Volt's program is just different from the Greens program, very clearly, yeah. Nuclear energy, for example, also. So these are issues where we differ. And there, I look a bit like the red flag, this is something I should be careful. So Metzeler, I don't know if you know this, but I started a group to renovate the European Parliament from within.
Yes, I was going to. That's a question I have for later. Yes.
Then I'll answer that question later on. But but for me, what's really important is that the European Parliament improves itself. And Roberta Metzeler came to that group to improve the European Parliament and promised to continue the work that we had done with David Sassoli, who passed away. So for me, this is a clear, let's say, negotiation chip I got, yeah, like something she offered for our support. And I'm somehow coordinating this group, I feel obliged to get this from her because I want that from her. I want that she improves the parliament. And there was no real chance for a counter candidate because everything was already organized up front between the different groups negotiated. So I got my part of that negotiation, I felt. There was no counter candidate that was going to win. So I didn't see any benefit in saying I'm against you, even though we knew it would be conservative. And she's probably the best that you can get when it comes to conservative politicians. And she had distanced herself from the position against abortion publicly. So when I weighed this off, I was like, sorry, but it just doesn't make any sense for me to vote against this candidate right now. I don't see what what is the benefit for me when I can actually be part and get potentially something which would improve parliament. So from my personal perspective, very freely, I didn't feel any inclination to vote against her, and so I didn't.
Okay. Well, actually, let's talk about this group of MEPs that are working on how to better how to make the work of the parliament better, how to improve procedure and all that. So, could you tell us a bit how many MEPs are there? What exactly are you doing as part of this group?
Yeah. So to be honest, Volt is all about improving structures, almost boringly, we care about a functioning European Union. So that's our whole spiel, if you want. So when I joined the European Parliament, I was a bit like, okay, so we want Parliament to be the cool place, which basically elects the government, and something that it should be really like the center. Parliamentary democracy is really like what I always try to say. I don't care so much about terms, but if I had to choose one between republic and federation, and it would be parliamentary democracy. Yeah, that for me is the core of what I personally care about. And then Volt, I think we use republic now or something. But this is really the core for me, parliamentary democracy. And so when I joined parliament, I was like, okay, actually, this house is not that cool. The debates are a bit lame.
Yeah.
The hearings are a bit boring. It's just a bit like, okay, if this is, the representative house where we have the debates about the core issues of our lives as Europeans, it can get a bit better. It can be slightly upgraded. So, and then I looked around me and I found a lot of MEPs which were new and some which were also young. If even, I don't know if we are still young. I don't know.
I still count myself as young. I put the line at 35. Before 35, I still consider myself as young. So yes, you're younger. Okay. You can go ahead.
So then I have 5 months or 4 months until I'm old, I guess.
We're not yet old. We're not young. They're different.
Okay, so then basically I took some not old, basically parliamentarians. I found them because I liked them. We talked and I liked them, and so I brought them together in a room and said, "What do you want to improve in this house? What do you want to do? We sit here. Let's see. What do you want to do?" And then we had like a bit of an ideation workshop thinking about what we could actually improve. And it was clear that the plenary debates was the first thing. The calendar of the parliament was the second one. Like, how often do you meet? Are we using Mondays and Thursdays wisely? How could that all be improved and so on? And then we met Sassoli, the president back then, to discuss our ideas. Then we hijacked the debate I think it was in 2020 in January or something, on the conference on the future of Europe, very nerdy topic. And it was fun. Like, I mean, I remember Merit McGuinness, who's now, I think, a commissioner.
Yes.
She was presiding over the thing, and she was like, she came afterwards, she came to me and said, like, I've never seen something like this. I've never seen an actual, debate where people are attacking each other like this in the European Parliament. And she was like, her eyes were like, beaming.
And she was impressed with it, or she was like reproaching you, how dare you to do that?
No, she loved it. She loved it. She said, like, I finally am presiding over something that's actually fun, like something where something is happening. So I think there was appreciation. There was also some media coverage. And so based on that, we basically expanded a bit. And then Sassoli, then the pandemic came. So everything was cut. And when we came back after the pandemic, Sassoli asked us to his office and said, you know what? I've realized we can change everything, because we had to for the pandemic. So I had an enlightenment, an illumination. Like, we can change everything. Nothing is given. So I love what you're doing, and I'm going to make it bigger. And then he came up with basically the presidential strategy of focus groups, where he brought together a lot of members of parliament, bigger ones, smaller ones, in the sense of political weight. And he always put one of us in the chairing position of these groups. And then we basically, wrote some recommendations. And now we're still trying to implement some. Yeah, I mean, the fact that we speak from the front now in the European Parliament is one of the things that came out of it. What I really want to achieve still is one fun hearing. So, and with this I'll stop also, like, blabbering. But I don't know if you remember Mark Zuckerberg's hearing in the US Senate.
It was terrible. Sorry, the one in the US. I'm talking the one in the Parliament. Yes.
Yeah, these are exactly, that's the difference. Yeah, so the one in the European Parliament was terrible, as you said, horrible, and then the one in the US Senate was genius. So what's the difference? They had something called, and I looked it up, cross-examination in the US. Cross-examination means I ask you a question, you say something, I interrupt you and say, no, you're not answering my question. What I'm asking is this. Can you say yes or no? Is this okay? And then he says yes. He said, yeah, but if this is yes. So you have an actual examination, yeah, like almost like in the movies when you see lawyers, questioning the witness. So like, this is a cross-examination, and I want this, like 4 or 5 MEPs from the same group sitting up somewhere, looking down at the person who's sitting there, and he's or she's questioned, cross-examined for 20 minutes by the same group. And then, like, it goes to the next group, and like the 5 people leave, and then you have 5 people sitting there. And then, so this is my dream to get to in the European Parliament, that we have a controversial guest, and we have actual cross-examination to get to the bottom of what they're actually thinking. That would be my big dream still for this mandate, and obviously to try to really still improve the debating culture, and to think about that, it would be also cool. Yeah. I might even be in favor of a couple of mandatory sessions in the plenary, where everybody needs to go, or something like this. I think it could be fun.
And since we're talking about the debates, like one of the things that the Parliament introduced recently is the so-called question time, where we have the one commissioner that comes to the Parliament, and for 1 hour is supposed to answer whatever questions that MEPs come up with. There is no preparation, there is no set, there is a general theme for the debate, but then MEPs just come and they ask their questions. Are you satisfied with this system, or do you still see some improvement from what we've been able to see so far?
And so this was also one of our recommendations, one of our ideas, and I'm very happy that Berta Metzler implemented this. So I'm happy with that. I think it's cool. I would like to have the Commission present, I think, more often, to make it a bit more interesting. And also, we need to somehow, how do you say this? like make it advertise this a bit more, and not make it, because they do still make it specific on topics.
Yeah.
So that means that you still have individual commissioners and then the MVPs interested in the topic coming. I think what would be cool, my dream for question time, and that's how it's done, for example, in Canada, I think, is you have the Prime Minister, then you have next to them all the other ministers sitting there, and then the questions come, and then the Prime Minister answers, and if they want to refer this question to someone, they can. If they want to answer it themselves, they can as well. So then you actually have, an actual accountability. And that's the reason why we want to have it, because we want to have accountability of the Commission towards the European public via the Parliament.
And that leads me a bit to the question of the perception of the Parliament, which you already covered. And I received some question. One of the questions was how can we counter like the impression that Brussels is very undemocratic, very bureaucratic, and so not very appealing to citizens. So how to counter this impression from citizens?
Yeah. The funny thing is, I think the European Commission is doing a fantastic job, like they're often a lot smaller in terms of department size than national respective functions. And I think they're doing a really good job, high quality people. The issue comes from my perspective, and that's why I said parliamentary democracy from the elections. Yeah? And that's like really the core. Like if I had to choose one thing to change, it would definitely be that the majority of the European Parliament votes for the European Commission, and then the European Council gets demoted to what it should be, which is like a Bundesrat, kind of like second chamber, which can stop stuff if it hits the subsidiarity level. You know, like if it's somehow like if there's an overgrasp or
overreach of power. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Overreach of power. So this is the one thing. Like I often have this example of people that I know that text me and say like, hey, in Georgia too, we need two more votes to basically make sure that we have the state or the region so that like basically Biden can win in the US elections. Yeah, so I mean, there's all these stories that everybody knows all the details about US elections until like the local identification number, like where they need to be. So to cut it shorter, I think people know details about US elections because they know they matter historically. And what I want is that European elections matter historically, because if you get a conservative majority, you will have conservative politics, and you might not like it, or you might like it a lot. And if you want to change that, then you vote for a social democratic, green, liberal, whatever kind of European government, so that the actual choice is not anymore between pro or against Europe, but it's like, what kind of Europe do you want? Do you want one with more closed borders, more money for families and small, medium-sized businesses, or do you want one with a minimum wage standard, a little more immigration, but maybe shittier sanctions against Russia? This is a bit like really my core interest. Yeah? And that's the best promotion is actual elections, I think.
And since we're talking about elections, like something that the parliament is really pushing hard these days is the idea of transnational list for the next European election. So, how do you see this idea of transnational lists like potentially improving the situation for the visibility of the elections and all that?
Yeah, I mean, I negotiated that file in the Constitution Committee. So for me, I don't care so much about the ex-MEPs that are going to get elected via this. So now it's 28, yeah? Let's say where it was 50 or something. I don't know. Like, it's a small number of people that doesn't really change the power dynamics in this house. But like, what I care about is that every European citizen has the choice to vote for a political direction, a European political direction. That's really like the big difference. I vote for the European Conservatives because they want to, as I said, potentially have a more restrictive immigration policy and XYZ, whatever else they want. And then I have a face maybe connected to that, and like the European Conservative lead candidate or someone that stands for this. So I think that's important for a democracy to really bring these European parties closer to the citizens. So like sometimes when I had debates about this, people said, "Oh, but you're distancing even further from the citizens." Yeah, like but it's the exact opposite. You would still have your first vote, But then you would have a second vote that brings European parties closer to you, because suddenly you can vote for someone, you can vote for a European party. Currently, the European parties are super important in the European Parliament, but nobody, approved their agenda or like the electoral program or something. And this would really change it. And so I really care about it a lot.
And so, I mean, now it's up to the council to pick it up, because you have to change the EU electoral law, and we know, especially since 2019, that the council is not exactly keen on, let's say, improving the position of the parliament in the context of the election. We've seen that with the election actually of Ursula von der Leyen, because the council basically killed the Spitzenkandidat system, where the president of the commission was supposed to be the head of the list of each political group in the European Parliament. So, how do you expect? Do you expect at least the council to seriously consider the transnational list and even to accept it for 2024?
I mean, I gave the European Parliament, I gave it a 20% chance that we get the transnational list through. We got it through, so 1 and 4, we got the 1. I think it's great. It was hard work to convince really individually conservative politicians of this idea, but we managed. Now I give it a 5% chance that the council will approve the transnational lists for this time around. I think the issue is just that, as you said, I mean, they lack ambition, interest, and always feel that there's something more relevant than Europe. And it also, goes in a direction that many of these heads of state and government don't really like. So let's see. I think what for me is always important is I try the maximum I can to reach an improvement, and I will continue. I'm talking to all national parliaments. I have, I meet Europe committees. I met already 4 or 5 of them to talk, to explain, because I think the worst thing is misunderstanding something, like an intention. So I try to explain why this is important, why we are basically why we're increasing accountability with this proposal, not reducing it. And it helps, but let's see where this goes. That's dependent on a lot of different factors, and not let's say the least connected. I mean, it's also connected to the treaties, the change of the treaties, which we are trying to trigger, and the question of whether passerelle decisions can be changed, or whether unanimity decisions can be changed to majority decisions by the passerelle clause.
Just to finish on the election, and then we're going to talk a bit about the treaties. Actually, we know that one of the issue that European elections have is that in many countries, actually, there is a lower and lower turnout of people showing up to the election and voting. So, have you made proposals to David Sassoli, to Roberta Metsola, and you submitted ideas to try to how to let's say boost a bit election participation, or for you it's something that's depends of each country, each national campaign, and we have to make do with what we have?
We had to make it very blunt and simple. What I tried to say earlier is you can try to build beautiful advertisement campaigns around Europe and its relevance, or you can actually make the vote relevant. And that's what I'm promoting. And that means you actually let citizens decide who leads Europe for the next 5 years, which you can only do if you give the parliament the power to vote for a government. Then you would know, and then you would see for 5 years what it actually means to have a conservative politician at the helm, or like a social democratic or liberal or a green. You would feel the difference, and I think that for me is the best advertisement. The historic relevance of your individual vote will actually drive voting, I'm sure.
And so to do what you propose, for that, to make sure that the parliament is the one deciding who will become the president of the commission, you would need, like I mentioned, treaty changes. And we know that it's a process that is that the parliament is pushing hard. The Conference on the Future of Europe has asked for several times for measures that would require treaty changes. The parliament has asked for a convention, and we still see member states a bit dragging their feet on this idea. Is this something that you think will will happen anytime soon, or are we doomed to ask for treaty changes for next 15 years and doomed to see the council say, yeah, no, maybe next time?
There again, like the funny thing for me is that I moved a bit from a spectator to a participant perspective. So for me, what matters is that we are trying to do the maximum to get it done. And in the end, I mean, the treaty changes that we were discussing is the reason for Volt's existence. So like what I care about is that we have that. So how can we get there? Maybe if we have some visionary leaders, but I don't know if you followed the debates for the 70th birthday of the European Parliament. It was quite funny. There was 3 heads of state coming, and one of them, I won't say which, said, "I'm so happy we don't have visionary leaders anymore because now we have visionary people." And he was trying to be extra democratic, but I found it just sad because it's true. There's no more visionary leaders. Definitely the German Chancellor Scholz is categorized as the opposite of a visionary leader. Merkel herself was probably also not the most visionary leader that you could ever get, just to talk about my own member state. So we're lacking clearly the courage to actually go somewhere and to improve something in Europe, because people just don't give it the importance that it has, and that is really a huge issue. So that's why for me, I don't know what the likelihood is of the current heads of states and government to change the treaties. What I know and what is within my power is to make Volt as strong as possible, so that I steal votes from national parties, because they are all part of national parties, so that these national parties need to change their positioning towards the future of the European Union, or towards the European Union. So my theory of change is very simple. I'll steal your seat until you change your opinion. And that's basically what we are doing with Volt, and that's why it's so important for me to run for the 2024 elections out of all 27 member states to really anchor this message. And that's why it's cool for me that we are in the Dutch Parliament already, and that we are in the Bulgarian Parliament, and that we're trying to get into more.
But I mean, to get on a bit more positive, let's say, idea, because I'm talking like that about treaty reforms and all that as if it's all doom and gloom, nothing's gonna happen, etc. But we've seen over the past few years like a real change in narrative in the EU political let's say discourse. I mean, we are talking now the big talk is about strategic autonomy. We're talking more and more about, okay, how can we make Europe stronger? So we're moving in terms of narrative away from the idea of, oh, we need to keep a European Union of nation states that doesn't do anything beyond its competence as in the treaties. There is a willingness from innovating, sometimes like as a answer to push for treaty reform. Say, okay, we need to change some things, but maybe use the close passerelle, as you mentioned. We're talking about, I mean, we did some things that were simply unthinkable 10 years ago. Like, think about buying together vaccines or issuing EU debts. Those were completely unthinkable. So do you think that still, despite the let's say the institutional problems in terms of political idea, the political objectives, we're going in the right direction when it comes to the European Union?
I think we are reaping the benefits of what has been built by visionary leaders. Yes, like I think that's definitely true. So we have some instruments which allow us to react to crises when they're there, and luckily enough, we do. And you're right, there are some very good examples, like the Recovery Fund, which I also negotiated, which is great fun. So there are definitely good examples, but I think there are also limits that you just feel so much when you are in it and you see what's being done. So just to give you one example, which is at the same time good and shows the weakness, the common vaccine purchasing program.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was amazing. Imagine if all the countries had like bid against each other to get vaccines, and then we would have closed borders or something, and it would have really been an ugly thing. So I'm super happy we managed to do that. But when issues arrived, people started saying, like, what's the European Commission doing with these contracts that are so expensive? Why did we buy so much, to be very frank, French vaccines that never got approved, even though we should have bought more? BioNTech, was already clear then. And, why did we buy to such expensive prices? All good questions. Normally, these questions are asked to the Minister for Health. In this case, Madame Kyriakides. I think she was in Cyprus at that time in her winter holidays. She was definitely not working on the vaccines. Yeah? It was given to Breton and someone else who felt more important to the Commission President von der Leyen. Okay, so then let's say at least Breton. But Breton also didn't take this decision to buy more French vaccines. Why? Because every week they would meet the Commission with the 27 health ministers, which is basically, the if you want, the STIRCO, the steering committee. Why? Because they didn't have the power and the let's say the accountability to actually be the ones taking the decision. So, and the French health minister said, "I want 3 million more of these, 300 million, I don't know, 20 million, I forgot what number, more of these French vaccines." And that's okay, like that's just right, and that's fine. But then when the blaming started, everybody started blaming Ursula von der Leyen for like doing bad contracts. And that's the fuck up, because normally it should have been the health minister who's appointed by the government, by the parliament, and the parliament should have been unhappy, should have invited her to question hour, as you said earlier, said like, what the heck have you been doing there? And she would have said, I negotiate XYZ, and then they would say like, that's really bad, we're going to ask you to resign, and if you don't do that, we will ask the whole government to resign. So when it comes to accountability, to clarity, also to the feeling that citizens know what's actually going on and can influence it because they can go to their representatives to do that. Like, all of that was broken. Nobody knew that the STIRCO existed of the 27 health ministers. So while I'm super happy to say I'm glad and thankful, that we have this European Union as it currently is, and I'm super happy that there were some really good moments of where we dealt well with the crises. Yeah? I would still say we can feel the issues that the current construct brings up. And I bring you one last one, which is the 18 billion currently blocked for Ukraine by Orban. I mean, the fact, and I've been to Kiev, so the fact that someone like one of the 27 heads of state and government is actually blocking 18 billion euros to go to a country which is being attacked by Russia, and where the people are being killed by Russia, which will go bankrupt without EU funds, because he doesn't want to change his own corrupted and like basically unjust system, in the sense that they destroy the rule of law. That's really a problem. There we really come to the construction designs, and that needs to be changed. Sorry for the long answer.
No, that was interesting. So that's fine by me. I have a question in the chat. Earlier, you said that you were having a different position than the Greens when it comes to the EU army, because the vote has a clear position. So you defend the position of vote. And so someone in the chat is asking, okay, but if you want an EU army, because I'm assuming that's the position that you're defending. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so assuming that there is a EU army, how do you envision like a common structure? Would there be a European Minister of Defense, a Commander in Chief, who would be financing this thing? Who decides the rule of engagement? So how does it work in your mind, this EU army?
Yeah, so I mean, I probably said it a couple of times already, but I'm a big fan of Parliament. So I would always say that we would need a European Parliamentary Defense Army. Yeah? And so who decides about the engagement would be Parliament, and what could they decide about where to defend. Yeah, so I would not see it as useful to have basically an aggressive army, but one that is only allowed to defend. That makes it a bit more difficult with, let's say, in what kind of circumstances is NATO. I mean, a NATO case should be also considered a defense case, and then it means it's not only EU borders, but that's something I think we would need to figure out then. But I mean, for me, these are really like the core elements. How would you finance it? I mean, that goes back to the question of how the EU is currently financed with its 7-year budget and then yearly budgets. I mean, I would say that there's a need for some own resources, meaning like direct, taxation for some key taxes, be it a plastic tax or a financial transaction tax or something like this, or CO2 tax. We could think about different taxes that we could have on the European level, but I think that's a bit of a separate question from the question of, I mean, how do we finance any EU program? It would be the same as how do we finance the army. Just one point in terms of financing: we have 17 different tank systems in the EU, for the same tank category. That's because everybody likes to have their own local homemade tank, and that obviously is an issue when it comes to economies of scale. So if you would actually unify the armies, you could first of all specialize in different areas into different basically different capabilities, but you could also just save a lot of cash that you're spending on defense right now.
I'm looking at the time, so I will go into my final question, and then I will free you. One question that is interesting in the chat, especially since you said that in 2015 you were working in the German, you worked for a couple of months in the German migration office. So the question in the chat is, what is your stance on the immigration situation that keeps nations like Italy, Greece, and Spain also under pressure when it comes to migration, and in the situation where at EU level we know that the migration solidarity is something that is completely blocked in the council. So what's your stance on that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's one of the saddest parts of where lack of decision making actually really hurts and kills people. And to make it very blunt, I think it's fine good to have a bad decision making process, but sometimes this can lead to actual suffering, and this is the case when you look at asylum migration. That's why it's also not a surprise that this element is what actually brought me to really get politicized about it, because I do believe that because we don't have decisions on a system, even if it was more closed or more open, we have developed an alternative system which I would call deterrence by suffering. Yeah. So currently, what the EU countries, since nobody helps them, are doing at the outside, and also financed often by EU money, is to say we will make it more costly for you to come here in terms of suffering than to stay wherever you are right now. And that's the only system we currently have in place. That's why we are financing Libyan rebels and to put them in boats and put them some uniforms on, and they then get the distress signals from the Mediterranean to go to the boats and take the people back who they often torture, often rape, and they're like, I'm not making this up. This is all reported by New York Times to Guardian to anyone. What do I think we need is a European asylum system for sure, which means you will just ask for European asylum status, and then you get that across the European Union. And I think that also means that we should uphold the right to seek asylum. That doesn't mean there's a right to get asylum. The right to get asylum is connected to the merits of your case, and that is something that has to be assessed. And then we also have to discuss a bit about returns, which is difficult because very often the countries of origin don't want to take people back. So it's a really complex system. But I mean, the current one really doesn't work. And I just want to leave you with one last thought on the Ukrainian example. Yeah? If you look at how it's done in Ukraine, you can see that the uptake in terms of work is a lot higher than with other people coming through the normal asylum procedures, because they never stopped working. They just they came here, then they continued with their whatever job they were doing, either here or like even remote in their own country. So like it's
Oh, we lost Damian. Let's see. Hi chat, by the way. Let's see. Let me get something. Oh shit, no. Come back. What happened? Give me a sec. We're being censored here, guys. Not acceptable. Okay, Damien, are you back with us? I see that you're... Hey!
Yes, I am. Sorry, my device died.
Okay, so I thought it was on my side. I was actually, oh shit, I did something wrong with it, so welcome back. So you were saying, sorry.
No, I was just saying that, like, obviously, I mean, to close this, if you have a commission that makes a proposal and it goes into the two houses and then they come together and then make a law, yeah, the parliament and council, and then what comes up. So if one of them, the council, and in this case the 27 interior ministers, cannot come to an agreement, then the whole system breaks.
Yep.
And that's not an issue because of political divergencies. It's an issue, a systematic issue, like a structural issue of the European Union. And here it, as I said, leads to death. So I think that we have enough incentive to really try to change it, and I think it's it's an important step.
And to finish, I mean, you were just coming back for the very final question, and I promise I'm freeing you. So you mentioned that if you could change something, you would change you could make the EU like a parliamentary regime. Beyond that, like you snap your fingers, you change anything about the EU. What do you change and why?
I mean, so as I said, like it would include abolishing the council, so I leave that under the normal snap finger. Yeah. But I mean, I think honestly, like a European asylum system would really be a European asylum system would really be like the core first thing I think I would do.
All right, that's very clear. So, on this note, thank you very much, Damian Boeselager, for sorry, I'm speaking French. I'm tired. To have taken the time to answer our questions tonight. Before you go, if there is like one message you want to say to our audience, what would it be?
It's probably true for most of you, but do get active in parties. Yeah? They sound boring. They are boring sometimes, but I think it's still, our world is in Europe is still working on party democracies. And if you look at the numbers since the 1980s, party membership has halved. People just don't like parties anymore, and it's still the way that we elect candidates, then lead, go into parliaments or even lead governments. So do please not forget the parties and go somewhere which is not anti-democratic.
Well, thank you very much, Damien, for taking your time. Guys, make sure to thank him for your time. You can follow him on Twitter. You have his ads just below the video feed. Damien, I wish you a very good evening. Thanks again for coming. And yeah, see you another time. Bye.
Thank you so much for your time and the questions. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys, let's do the debriefing and the discussion. In the meantime, when I switch on the camera, do tell me what you thought of the interview. The usual up camera. Where are you, camera? Webcam. USB up. Hello again, chat. So impressions. We liked, we didn't like. Up. In the meantime, I take my notes. There we go. But yeah, I mean, Damien already came on the channel last year, and he actually, it's funny because the first time he came on the channel was to play video games with me and other MEPs, and then we spent a while to try to find a slot to do the interview, and we finally managed. So I'm quite happy to have had him here tonight. So. Yeah, I focus, like, I changed a little bit the way I do interviews, not the way I do interviews, but usually I go like really committee per committee. Okay, what do you work in this committee? What there is this file. Okay, what do you think about this file? Here I decide to do something a bit more meta because like it comes from Volt, which is like a pan-European party, something very specific. So I thought it was interesting to focus on that a bit more for this interview, especially since we had a bit less time than usual. But I'm still happy because we were able to cover quite a bit of things. So as usual, I have my notes. So let's dive into it. So someone in the chat was saying, oh yes, Volt is not the only pan-European party. There is also DiEM25, which is true. I forgot about DiEM25. So DiEM25, for those of you who don't know, is another pan-European, or at least it sells itself as a pan-European party that was created by a guy named Yanis Varoufakis. Yanis Varoufakis is a Greek guy. You may remember him because he was the finance minister in Greece of Tsipras, so the far left prime minister back then, and he was very, very, very a difficult person to work with during the Greek crisis, and he was he's an academic as a background. He was someone very aggressive, very aggressively negotiating. He made a lot of enemies in the EU back then, and I mean to the point where he got fired. I mean ultimately he got kicked out of the government by Tsipras because he was seen as being too extreme in his position, let's say, because at some point, so to sum up the situation, so during the Greek crisis, you had Greece was going a bit bankrupt, and so it was requiring EU money, money from the International Monetary Fund to keep its economy working. And so there were discussions between the EU, the EU, Greece, and the IMF about how we're going to give you money under what condition. And so that was the whole austerity policy, saying your country has bad finances, so you need to do reforms, you need to cut pensions, you need to have collect actual statistics and etc. So I mean, to be fair, that there was a lot of things not working in Greece and still not working in Greece back then. But yeah, and it was like a very brutal kind of moment. Even now, the consensus is that the EU was too brutal towards Greece. That's now the consensus, but still, Varoufakis back then, his position was to say, okay, if you don't give us what we want, we are going to take you down with us. And it was to the point where he was saying, okay, you had the Germans who wanted, some Germans wanted to kick out Greece from the Eurozone, so that Greece would stop having the euro, so their economy would collapse, but they would not take down the Eurozone with them, and notably the French were against that. Ultimately, Greece stayed in the Eurozone. And so Varoufakis' plans was, okay, we are going to make the situation so terrible that they have no choice but to give us what we want, because otherwise we just screw them up, and we're going to destroy our economy, but we're going to destroy their economy as well. And so at this point, Tsipras did, no, we're not going to do that. Get the fuck out of here. So he fired Varoufakis, and Varoufakis went to decide to create his own pan-European party, which ironically enough he based in Germany, called DiEM25, which was supposed to change European democracy, etc., etc. And I think they launched also a chapter in Italy recently. But yeah, the DiEM25 is long story short, DiEM25 is indeed another pan-European party, but I would say that it has been less successful than Volt has been, and definitely less well known than Volt. He started that due to the low electoral threshold. That's right, indeed. I forgot about this, because indeed in Germany you have 1% electoral threshold, so that's much easier to get elected and have than public funding. And so he lost elections. Indeed, I had forgotten about that. Thanks for the reminder, Agir Talk. But yeah, long story short, Volt is a pan-European party, which makes it a bit there is a 1% threshold. I mean, de facto it's a threshold. You can't have less than 1% of an MEP. But I do think. You sure there's no threshold at all? Okay, I stand correct. I was certain it was a 1% threshold. But well, it doesn't matter. So the unofficial threshold is 0.7%. Okay. I've learned something. Thanks. Moving on. So he said, he started in Germany in 2015. I mean, listening to him, it's funny because he seems to have been at all the terrible time in all the terrible places. Like he was in 2015 working in the German migration office, right in when there was the migrant crisis. So which I can understand that was not a fun time to be in these offices because of the sheer number of people they had to deal with. Then he got kickstarted into launching Volt by attending the defeat actually of Hillary Clinton. So yeah, it sounds like he was a bit conditioned by bad events. But all that to say that indeed the 2015 migrant crisis was one of the big defining moments for DI that everyone always speaks about. The before and after the migrant crisis, he created a lot of tensions that we're still paying today. Why did NatBot delete? Oh, you got 4 ads in a row. Why did NatBot delete your message? I don't get it. It's weird. And why did you get 4 ads in a row? That makes no sense. Because I designed the ad so that you have it at the beginning, and like once every hour. So yeah, right now it's possible. It's normal that you may have an ad, because I can see on my screen that indeed it's telling me that there is an ad, but the way I designed it is that there is one at the beginning and then one every hour. So that's weird. Okay, well, sorry about that, Paduga. You're spamming symbol. You're annoying NetBot, Paduga, but yeah, sorry about that. Let's see. Did I miss all the messages? No, I didn't. Okay, well, moving on. So yeah, something that he mentioned that was interesting on why he got into the Greens after being elected in the European Parliament. Said, oh yeah, basically I went to Renew. I went to the Greens and I negotiated how much, how badly they wanted me. And indeed, like when you have a new party coming, you have the political groups who are a bit joking to have them on board, and then joining them. So for instance, like when Macron was elected and created technically a new party, En Marche, there was a lot of attempts, a lot of discussion of who is En Marche going to join, because a brand new party, the party that is leading France. Of course, it's a big prize for whatever a political group would lend him. So there was discussion: oh, is he going to go to ALDE? Is he going to go to the EPP? Is he going to go to the Socialists, etc.? I mean, it was pretty obvious that he was going to end up in ALDE, but even himself, he was saying that back then, oh yeah, no, I don't want to join ALDE because I'm a new party. I need something new. I want a new political group, which is kind of bullshit. Let's be honest. It's just he wanted to have something of which create a new structure of which like his own political group would be at the center of. But yeah, that's let's say politics there. But all that to say that indeed you have negotiations with the groups to say, okay, who gives me the best package? And so in this case, it's the fact that he got the committees that he wanted to have that triggered him to go to the Greens. And I know, and someone mentioned in the chat, and I knew that ultimately it was a vote as well, an internal vote of a vote to accept the offer to go in the Greens. So there was also part of internal democracy of vote on where they would go. Okay, you see on DM. Yeah, but I mean, I don't count the non-EU EU countries, I would say. What else do I have? The Greens don't care about. Oh yeah. So that I didn't know, because he taught me that. So he said, oh yeah, in the Greens, you don't really care about the national delegations. And he said, yeah, since the beginning of the mandate, I've attended only 2 meetings of national delegations at the Greens, which is a bit odd. I mean, odd. No, it's a practice of the Greens, which is, I mean, they define their own rules. But yeah, I mean, coming since I worked in EPP, it's a pretty different kind of way of functioning, because national delegations have a big role in there, and they are a part of the they play a big role in the political balance within the political groups, the direction and all that. So it's always like the national delegations joking with each other to try to have the best position and have the most influence in the group. So it's interesting that it seems to say that in the Greens it's less important. I doubt that it's unimportant. I'd be surprised actually if it was considered completely unimportant, but yeah, it's interesting that as a way of working within the group. And then you also have another group that is very different in terms of functioning, is the left. So the left is the GUE, the left, it's the far left group in the European Parliament, where they are a confederal group, meaning that actually there they really don't give a shit about national delegation, in the sense of everyone does what he wants. So they actually no, it's actually the reverse. They really care about national delegations, because there is no group line in the left in this particular group. There is no discipline of votes, and so every delegation is free to do whatever they want. And so traditionally, so when you have plenary votes, so once a month you have the MPs going to Strasbourg to vote all the laws and all that, and traditionally each day, so Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, there is a political group meeting, meaning you have all the MEPs from the EPP, all the MEPs from SND, all the MEPs from the Greens, meeting together and discussing, okay, tomorrow we're voting that, what are we going to do, and yeah, again, they're taking decisions on how they're going to vote, the political priorities, etc., etc. So every night they have that, and I know that within the far left group, so the left, the GUE, they don't have these meetings actually. They do very little like actual political group meetings where you have all the MEPs from the left. The only meetings they would like that are not to discuss like what they're going to vote the next day. It's just debates to discuss how do they call that? International news, like what's happening in the world and all that. But otherwise, they have no discussions whatsoever, no negotiations amongst themselves on what is the common line for the votes coming the next day. It's like everyone does what they want. Every delegation do what it wants, and so it's the left unorganized as usual. I mean, it's the far left. Huh? It's not. It's a bit confusing, but because it's called the left, but it's the far left. But yeah, it's a pretty specific kind of way of working. Where else do I have? Yes, I don't know if I want to go into that much details. Like I have something about like when he was saying, oh yes, actually being part of a small group is an advantage over being part of a big group, because he said yes, in small groups that means that you can be responsible for more files, which is true. Because to explain briefly, so when you are in the committee, so he's part of the Constitutional Affairs Committee. Whenever you have a file, whenever you have legislation, whatever, you will have one MEP who will be the leader of the thing. He will be the responsible for the file. It's called a rapporteur. And so he comes from one political group. So let's say that the rapporteur is going to be EPP. He's going to be conservative. So you have one MEP conservative who will be the rapporteur, the main guy responsible for the file. But that doesn't mean that this one person does absolutely what they want and everyone follows him. No, you have the rapporteur, and then all the other political group will appoint one person as well to represent them. Hey, thanks for the follow, Nikki Lena, 98. Thanks for the follow and welcome. What was I saying? So yeah, each political group will name as well one person to represent the views of the group around this rapporteur. And so these guys are called the shadow rapporteur. And so you will have, in this case, I said there was one rapporteur from the EPP, and then you have the Greens, who will name, for instance, Damian Boeselager to be the shadow rapporteur, who will then negotiate with the main guy, the EPP guy, on what the file is supposed to go, what direction they will do amendments, etc., etc., etc. And so ultimately, you have this small group of person, the rapporteur and the shadows, who negotiate the actual text and define the line. And it's true that, of course, if you are part of a smaller group, well, that means that you have mathematically more chance to become a shadow, because there are many files and only so many MEPs. So you do basic division, and yeah, that's why you get more report per MEP if you're part of a small group. But the other side of the coin is that if you're part of a bigger group, that also means that you have more chances to be not a shadow rapporteur, but a rapporteur, meaning you have more chances to be the big guy, the one who is the leader on the file. And even if you are surrounded with other representatives from other political groups, the rapporteur has a lot of power. He is the leader. He's the one deciding. He's the one doing the initial draft. So he's deciding, okay, what is the starting position of the committee, and then the other will try to change it, whether right or left or center. But he's defining the line and all that. Because I chosen the rapporteur. Yes, I'm going to cover that because that's a good question. But yeah, mechanically speaking, the bigger group you have, the more chances you have to become rapporteur. Because and thank you for the segue, Paduga. To get a report, you have various systems, but the most common one is a so-called point system. So again, you are in the AFCO committee, so the Constitutional Affairs Committee. there is a legislation that arises on the desk of the committee, and so the committee say, okay, we have to do a report on this legislation. I don't know why I chose to take AFCO as a committee, because AFCO doesn't do a lot of legislative work, but for the sake of argument, let's assume they have a legislative file. So it's the file, they have it, it's on the desk. Who is going to be the leader of that? And so you have this so-called coordinators meeting where you have the bosses of each political group within the committee who will gather, and they will discuss and negotiate among each other who will take the lead. And so the way it works is based on a point system. Basically, the bigger your group, the more points you have. And you use these points to buy reports. So you will say, like in the committee, they will say, okay, if you want to buy a report, it costs 2 points. If you want to buy an opinion, it costs 1 point. And so you have a whole grade system, like for each type of file, it costs X points. And so these points, you get them at the beginning of the mandate and at half mandate. So you know that you have X points for the mandate, for the next couple of years. And so you have to, it's part of the strategy then within your group. Okay, how do you manage your points to get the important files for your group? Bearing in mind that it costs points to become a rapporteur, but it doesn't to be a shadow. So if you don't get if you don't buy a report, that doesn't mean that your views will never be heard. You'll still have a shadow in the end. It's just that you will not be the lead group on that. And so, like I said, the bigger the group, the more points you have, the more possibility you have to buy reports. Bearing in mind that there's also a priority system in the sense that it's the group that has the most points that choose first to spend its point, or not choose. Or they can also say, there is a file arriving. They say, no, I'm not interested, so take it if you want. I don't want this one because they want another file, etc. So there's a bit of tactics then between the political groups on. You know that, for instance, okay, there is this big file that is coming in a few months. I want to save my points because I want to be sure to have enough to buy this one. Points are allocated in function of how many MPs you have on the group or globally. It's more or less the same because the composition of each committee in terms of political groups reflects the global balance in the parliament, meaning that within AFCO, so the Constitutional Affairs Committee, you will say, I actually don't know how many, give me a sec, I will do something smart for a change. European Parliament, I will show you stuff, it's gonna be cool, you will see. I want the committees, I want AFCO, where is AFCO? AFCO. Where are you, AFCO? You're there, AFCO. So now I'm going to do something smart. Let me switch another there. Okay, I have the good one. It's perfect. Oh, it's as if I have planned this, but I didn't. Okay, so this is I'm on the website of the parliament. So this is the Constitutional Affairs Committee, the AFCO. So let's look at the members. So that's the members of AFCO. So you have MPs from ECR, the left, SND, PP, etc., etc. And so you have a finite number of MEPs in there. So I don't know how many there are. Like I won't do the math because I'm lazy. 20. Looks like a 30. Yeah, a little less than 40 MEPs in there. And so you will have let's say 10 EPP MEPs. Then you will have 8 socialist MEPs, and you divide the number of seats per the size of the political group, so that ultimately within the committee, the political balance reflects the political balance of the overall parliament. And so the more MEPs you have, the more points you have, and so the more ability you have to buy reports and this kind of stuff. So you could make the argument that actually being in a bigger group is an advantage because that means that you have more chance to be in in command, in being the lead guy of a file. Maybe this would be more interesting. Parliamentary committee. AFCO. Okay, so 55 divided by 2. Okay, so it's a bit more 30, 30 MEPs. So yeah, all that to say that it's linked to the number of MEPs in your political group, and then you can buy the reports with that, and that puts you in the leading position. So yeah, you could make the argument, and also beyond the buying the reports, being in a bigger political group that's also useful, because that means that you have more MEPs who are likely to vote your things. So if you're DPP, it's easier to get a majority than if you are the left, for instance. You will have to make much more efforts to get people to vote with you, which is not the case if you are EPP, if you are SND, etc. So yeah, you can make the argument could go both sides, and even if you get become shadow rapporteur on many files, that can also be a problem, because then you're just drowning. You don't have time to focus on in depth in all the files that you're getting. So that means also that you can sacrifice some files, in the sense of, okay, I'll pay less attention to that file because my priority is on this one. So it's it's a double-edged sword, let's say. Moving on Metsoa election, I think it was pretty clear, so I don't think it's necessary to go too much in depth about that. If you have, I didn't mention that, of course. If you have questions, if you have comments, do post them in the chat. I'm happy to talk about whatever. Otherwise, I'm just covering my list of things that I noted there. Oh yes, one that I have to discuss is the parliament is boring, and that's something that he realized once he joined parliament, and he did. The parliament is boring, and that's a big problem. If you watch, I don't know if you ever did that, and if you didn't, I don't know if I want to recommend you to do that, because that's painful. Watch to have watched a debate in the European Parliament. Debate, air quotes, in plenary, because it's actually not a debate. It's extremely boring because it's very rare that you have a debate like you would see in the UK, in the House of Commons, or probably in many of your member states, where you have MPs like arguing with each other, saying, no, I don't agree with you, and so there's a back and forth. That's actual. I agree. It's very generous to call them debates. Let me clarify that, because what they call debates in the European Parliament is more statements, in the sense that you have, indeed, MEPs that take the floor to talk about one topic, but they're not actually talking to each other. They're just making a statement. What me, MEP, think about this topic. And in many cases, actually, these speeches are done for communication. So they have their video, all the speech are recorded, so then they will have their nice video that they can put on their social media and say, oh, you see, I spoke in the parliament, in the plenary, to talk about, I don't know, the migration policy, and I said, oh yeah, I don't agree with what the commission is doing, or I agree with what the commission is doing. So it's communication. It's not a conversation. It's not like an actual debate, and that makes it terribly boring, because again, it's a succession of statements. In many cases, you will have MEPs that will say the same thing as other MEPs, so you're just hearing more or less the same thing over and over and over and over again. So yeah, it's not fun. It's not fun. I mean, if you want to like the thing I usually do when I don't have to do it for work, it's you will watch, like, if you want to watch something, a debate on a topic, you want to listen to the very beginning and the very end. Why? Because at the very beginning, you will have the commission, the council, and the rapporteur and the shadow rapporteur. So the lead people, the main people, the most important people in the file will be talking, and then they worked they worked on the details of it. So they will actually go into details, and there are interesting things that they're saying. So you watch this at the beginning, and then it's going to be all the other MPs who also want to say something. And personally, I tend to skip that. Unless there's an MP I know will make like a very interesting interesting intervention, but otherwise you skip that and you come back at the end, because at the end then you have again the commission and the council and sometimes and also the rapporteur who take again the floor and sometimes respond to some comments that have been made and make closing remarks. So you want to watch the very beginning and the very end. And the things in the middle, unfortunately, are usually very boring or very repetitive. What did I miss? We call those parallel monologue. It's not a conversation, just snippets to give me. Yeah, exactly. It's more to get things on protocol and make it official than it was said. Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, then I mean, I'm bashing, but there's also a technical difficulty in organizing actual live debate in Parliament for starter, for one reason, which is translation. Every MEP, of course, is free to talk in its own language. So when you are in the plenary, you have live translation in 24 different languages. So that a French MEP can speak in French, a German MEP can talk in German, a Croat in Croat, etc., etc. The problem of this for debate is that you have latency. You can't react on the spot. You have to wait for the translation of what the guy is saying, and the problem of that is that it takes away, even if I'm not dunking on the translator, the interpretation services, they do a great job. It's not easy or fun to do a live interpretation, but you lose a lot of the substance of the style and all that in translation. So you get the main idea, it's an actual interpretation, so it reflects what the MEP is saying, but you lose a bit what makes it interesting in a debate, which is the stylish thing and the intonations, because of course, like they have MEPs will have the interpretation headphones, and they will hear the interpreter saying on like a normal tone what they're saying. So yeah, it takes away a lot of the possibilities to make actual debate, because you have latency and you're losing, let's say, part of the verve that makes a debate a debate. So that's a first difficulty for the parliament to hold an actual debate. It's not impossible. It has happened in the past that you have like sometimes MEPs who get pretty worked up on that. I mean, back in the days, you would one of the most entertaining things was to watch Guy Verhofstadt and Nigel Farage yell at each other in the parliament. That was something that was a classic and very entertaining. But beyond that, it's adding a layer of difficulty. Second thing that is difficult is that in many cases, you don't have time to speak actually. When you're speaking in plenary, you're given 1 minute, 1 minute 30, maybe 2 minutes if you're a shadow rapporteur or something, to speak, and it goes really, really fast. Like 1 minute, 1 minute 30, it's really difficult. Like when you're an assistant and you're writing a speech for your MEP, it's very challenging to write something that makes sense and that fits in 1 minute 30, and you have to do the 1 minute 30, because if you go above time, your mic is going to be cut. So you're just going to be, nobody's going to hear what you're saying. So it's very difficult to as well to make an actual debate when you have intervention of 90 seconds, 1 minute. Sometimes it's 1 minute, literally. Sometimes it's 1 minute. So I remember one of my past MEPs was saying, the first time he spoke in plenary after being elected, so that was back in 2009 or something. He said, "Yeah, I made my first speech in European Parliament, and actually I came to a difficult reality, because by the time I was finishing my thanks, like saying, it's an honor to be in Parliament, thank you, President, machin, he ran out of time, and so he had barely finished his introductory remarks that his mic was cut, and so he was not able to say even half of what he was planning to say. So it's another layer of difficulty for actual debates to take place in the parliament. Doesn't mean that it's impossible to do it, but it's something also to take into account when you want to do debates. And again, the parliament is trying to make it more interesting. You have now the speaking time where you have the MEPs directly arguing, asking questions to the commission. So it's one step in the right direction. But yeah, all that to say that it's not as easy to do. Don't tell Damian I miss my party leaders interview. I'm going to clip that and I'm going to send it to him. That's what's happening, Chaos. And don't complain. You were warned that it was happening, that Damian was coming. So yeah, tough luck for you. Tough luck for you. But yeah, I mean, in case you can watch the replay. What else can I tell you that would be interesting? I mean, I could talk for hours. You know me, and we've been going on for quite a while. So I think I will go into my conclusion, but not quite the conclusion. You see, I'm very clear when I say things. Sorry, I'm getting rid of notifications there. Yeah, next time I'm seeing you is going to be on Thursday, and Thursday is going to be something a bit special because I'm having my very first partnership, guys. So on Thursday night, there's going to be a stream at 6:30, so be there. And I'm actually doing a partnership with Euranet Plus. Euranet Plus is it's a European network of radios, news radio. So it's an organization that is is a bit financed by the EU to gather European radios, and so they are organizing an event for the end of the European Year of the Youth. So 2022 is the European Year of the Youth, and so they are partnering with me to organize an event where we are gathering MEPs and some young influencers to talk about Europe and youth, and what Europe is doing for youth, and what young people expect from the EU. So we are going to do that. I'm going to show you that on Thursday. And the funny thing about that is that it's going to be a discussion, but because I insisted on not doing something boring or very classic. Not something very classic. We're going to do that playing a video game. So we're going to play mini golf with the MEPs and the influencers. So that's going to be pretty fun. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be on Thursday night, Thursday evening at 6:30. So I really ask you to be there. It would be I think it's an important moment for the channel to have this first partnership, and I hope that you will enjoy it. And I will of course welcome the feedback that you have, and hopefully that will open the doors to more partnership in the future with other organizations and all that. And yeah, I mean it's gonna be nice. I'm going to be in the parliament. We have like today actually. I was after work. I was in the parliament in the TV studios to set up all the thing, etc. So it's gonna be cool. It's not going to be in my in my room like it is now. Playing video games is always nice. Yes. I mean, it's not going to be like hardcore gaming. We're gonna play mini golf, but like mini golf like. Mario Kart, like it's golf with your friends, so it's gonna be a bit funny. So yeah, I hope that you will be there. I hope that you enjoy the interview. I will do reminder on Discord and all that, but yeah, I would be really grateful if you guys could be there on Thursday night to watch the event and discuss with me and all that. Medium rare core gaming, is it? Exactly, medium rare. It's gonna be great. So yeah, speaking of which, I'm putting in the chat my social media. So of course, if you're not already on my Discord, on Twitter, and all the good thing, do click on that. You can find me there. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the interview. I will find you. The problem is the leftist MEP will just attack each other and blame the US. Ah, that's gonna be fine. In any game I play, what are you talking about? Why would the left MEP attack the US while playing a video game? You lost me there. We'll talk about. I'm curious about the explanation there. In the meantime, I'm just doing that. But it was a joke. Sorry, I need to take lessons in jokes. Apologies. What was I saying? I was saying something very interesting. Yes, very important. Do follow the channel if it's not the case. You can of course subscribe to the channel if you're really feeling generous. You can also toss a coin to your streamer via Coffee. You have all the links in the chat and all that. And yeah, on this note, I wish you all a good evening, and I hope to see you there on Thursday evening at 6:30. I will post on Discord and all that. And yeah, have a good one, guys. See you soon. Bye.